Okay, so we've got the information in, and we know it comes from the apparatus. We know it comes from the eyes and vision. And we know it comes from the body. But then what's the out? Now the output is also to eye movements and to muscles in the spine and body and the neck. So we can measure those things, and we already do it every single day as chiropractors, as physiotherapists. A lot of times as OTs, we're measuring those things, we're looking at spinal curves. So it's nothing you're not looking at already. It's just things that we're going to be able to tease out a whole lot more specifically so you can work with them much more efficiently and with more confidence and enjoying it a lot more. Because let's face it, knowing more about the system means that you have a much better time. Okay, so we know what comes out of the brainstem. So if we're just going to look at eye movements, what can we actually test? So all of these here are more or less your head moving eye movements. So they have to have some vestibular contribution, almost have to. You can have the vestibular system not working and still have them working, but essentially they're your more vestibular eye movements. So you can look at, is there nystagmus, which just means do the eyes wobble when they're just sitting there? And you can do that with fixation or without fixation. So you can just observe the eyes and see if they're moving, or you can see if there is a, you can take the fixation away by using an ophthalmoscope. Secondly, you can check the VOR, and that's just turn the head to one side and see if the eyes stay where they are. And the A is for angular, and T is for translational. So we're just covering those two different planes off. And the planes, incidentally, look like this. They're what's called your Cartesian planes. So we'll go into that a little bit further in another talk. And the Cartesian planes are essentially up and down, side to side, and back and forth. They have fancy names, but that's what they are. And then rotation is just movement around those axes. So you can be in this plane here, which would be your pitch, around this one here, which would be roll, and around this one here, which would be your yaw. That's it. It's as simple as that. Okay, so you're going to check, that's your angular VOR. Your translational VOR is anything that moves along there. Okay. HIT, that's your head impulse test. That's just taking your head and moving it quickly in one direction. It's as simple as it is. Head shake, same thing, but a little bit slower, a little bit longer with your eyes closed. I do this one, eyes open and eyes closed, in a bunch of different varieties, just to tease out a few more things to measure and look at. Just found that's really practical. Dynamic visual acuity, just fancy words for putting up an eye chart and just having the patient read it while they turn their head side to side. Now, if you've got a good VOR, and therefore good integration here, and probably good integration or good integrity here, you can still read a line on a chart while your head moves. That's the whole point of vestibular system. That's its primary initial function. Now, the rest of the ones we're looking at are more so your cancellation. So can you not do it? And that's basically your frontal lobes coming down and saying, we like that you can do this, but we want to keep our eyes where we want them. Second thing is your smooth pursuit, just a fancy way of saying, can you track with your eyes? Now you might say, wow, is that actually vestibular? And not technically, but it does use a lot of the same circuitry. So what you'll find is if that's not working well, it's pretty hard for you to smooth pursue. There's a whole lot of extra brain circuitry on top of that, but you can check it. Now with your smooth pursuit, then you can, at the end of it, if you're doing it a crosshatch pattern, so you're going to have your eyes and you're going to go all the way this way, 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 up. I do up and down because I like to see when the eyes, how they jump. I get a lot of information from that. It's not in your standard tests. So all these are essentially eye muscles that you can test, and we'll go into them. So eye muscles are on your eyeballs, and they cause these movements. Upward movement is essentially a combination of all these. So it's upward movement is basically relies on a lot more integrity. So we test the lower ones first. So we're testing those. You can bang off and do another extra test at the end by just doing seeing if the patient can hold. So if they start to bounce, they should just be able to hold nice and tight. If they start to bounce and wobble, that means you've got a little bit of an end gaze nystagmus there. Pressure tests are essentially, be careful with these. If you're not sure, don't even try. But they're basically putting pressure inside by pulling the tragus, which is the ear, just subtly changing the pressure inside the area of the apparatus. So they're more tests of peripheral hard pathologies. Fast eye movements, which are another higher level up, and they require a lot more brain and this part here, and a little bit of this part here. And I think that's it. So that's your eye movements, and they're all relevant to the vestibular system. So next we'll talk about, and we'll go into that in our workshop, but you can go and look them up. And if you really want to, David Traster's done a spectacular eye movement video of the neurophysiology of these eye movements. It's really good, but it's pretty advanced. So you go and watch it, and if you're a beginner, let it wash over you like a bad dream, or a beautiful, or a good or a bad dream. It's a good dream because it's so elegant, but it might overwhelm you a little bit. So don't be overwhelmed. Just enjoy it. Other things, you can look all of these things up in a textbook. There's nothing new here. What we do with it, how we apply it, how we routinely measure things, how we intervene in these cases is what we'll talk about, and the practical ways we can do that. Okay.